Hello, everybody. My name's Anna Luanzanas, and I'm the design studio manager here at Brickworks, New York. At Brickworks, our goal is to make beautiful, stylish products that last forever. Products that are innovative, modern, timeless, and durable, as you can see here on our displays. Our design studios worldwide represent the very best of Brickworks, and they're a demonstration of our ongoing commitment to the architectural, builder, and consumer communities. Our guest speaker tonight is Grant Marani, a partner at Robert A.M. Stern Architects, who has been since 2000. His career spans a broad range of projects, including award-winning federal courthouses, mixed-use and residential developments, resort hotels, clubhouses, cultural buildings, and private residences worldwide. Grant has lectured on courthouse design for the Academy of Architecture for Justice and has served as a guest critic at the Harvard Graduate School of Design and the Yale School of Architecture. He has also served as an adjunct associate professor of design at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation at Columbia University. I would like you to join me in welcoming Grant here tonight.
Anna, thank you so much, and thank you, all dozen of you. Thank you for being here. So tonight, what I'd like to do is talk to you about my thoughts about brick and architecture. And brick beyond style is an idea that I'd like to delve into because brick accommodates any type of style, any type of character in architecture. So it's such a versatile material. And what you see behind me at present is a design we did for a monument, if you wish, in Xinjiang in China. I'm from Melbourne originally, and it's a city that has a lot of brick architecture and of a great range of styles and, as I said, character. And so I'm very much influenced by that background. Melbourne has a rich architectural heritage, and I'm very proud that I come from that town, as does Andrew. Right, Andrew? And brick architecture has influence on me. There are a number of architects who I've admired over the years, and I've tried to arrange these first 9 slides that really reflect 3 trajectories with brick architecture. The first is very abstract, if you wish, ranging from John Soane's work on the top left, Dudok in the middle, and then, of course, Lou Kahn, you can see on the right. Then we can move to the more polychromatic work of William Butterfield, and the 2 images on the left, and then in Melbourne, Peter Corrigan and Maggie Edman. And then, of course, the work of Edwin Lutyens, which you can see on the bottom left. Beautiful textural stuff, very tactile use of brick of all forms. And that also is true of Aalto's work, which you can see in his experimental house that he did in 1953, and then the chapel at MIT by Eero Saarinen. All beautiful use of brick, and just gives you some sense of style using brick, the various styles that one can achieve in character. Talk about our office briefly. We're international practice, as Anna so kindly mentioned. And most of my work has been in Japan, China, Kazakhstan, and in Europe as well, and just trying to get a foothold in Australia at this point. And of course, I've worked throughout many states in the States. We have a very diverse practice, ranging from town planning to offices, residential, academic, museums, libraries, retail, residential work, hospitality, and resorts. And again, you can see that these are all in very different, very many and varied locations. Here in the city, and I think most would be quite surprised at how many buildings we've been responsible for, particularly apartment buildings, such as 220 Central Park South and 15 Central Park West, which really are probably at the very height of both style and in terms of wealth, at least, in New York City. And so we're very proud of the fact that we do that work, but at the same time, we also work with breaking ground, so we do supportive housing as well. So we do the high end, the mid, and then also we do supportive housing, and we're very, very proud of that. It's important that architects be involved in supportive housing wherever they can. Brick is Beyond Style. This is a number of our projects, both around, well, it's literally around the world. And again, it gives you some sense of the range of character and styles that our office produces, which has much to do with our clients, much to do with the location, and much to do with the type of materials we can use. And we can and do use brick wherever possible. It's a good plug. It's a good plug. So we are very pleased about our work in brick around the world because it offers character and scale. And here you can get a sense of the attention to detail that we really concern ourselves about in every building that we do. I think that we don't build diagrams, we build real buildings that people sense character, style, and scale. These are all very important to us, and that takes a lot of work to achieve, and also it takes a lot of research, and research is very important to us in our work, that we really capture the spirit of the place and also the spirit of our clients' endeavors for and ambition for their buildings. I'm going to focus on two projects today, very different in their function, very different in their locations, and very different in the way they look and present themselves to the public. And there's two, I'm going to give a little bit of background on both of them because they're interesting how they came to be. On the left is the International Quilt Museum. That came to us back in 2008, or actually before then, when they first approached us. A couple, artist and Robert James, had amassed a number of quilts, 1,000 in fact. And they went around the country to various institutions saying, would you take these quilts? We'd love to donate them to your university or college. And every group that they went to, every institution they went to, they said, oh, no, we can do 50, maybe 100, but not 1,000, forget it, sorry, we can't do that. So finally, they had a connection to someone in Lincoln, Nebraska, who's involved in textiles. And she said, oh, you're kidding? I would take all the quilts, but I have nowhere to put them. And so the Jameses said, we'll build a building for you if you want to take care of them. So she ended up having this building built. There was a design competition. We were selected, and we worked with Pat Cruz, who was the head of textiles. And she had a little office. The department was no bigger than this room. And she was able to she was given basically this wonderful new building to house and restore quilts, and to exhibit, I should say. Then on the right, the Immanuel Chapel, and I'll explain the story a bit more as well. There was, actually, I'll just go to the images. It'll be much easier for me to explain. So let's start with the Quilt Museum. Here you see the facade of the Quilt Museum, and the idea of weaving and tapestry came into play in terms of how we developed the facade. As you can see, here's a series of step patches, if you wish, like a quilt. And it actually follows the ramp which leads up to the main exhibition space, which I'll describe in a moment. So the Quilt Museum is in the bottom left of this image, and it's off campus, and it really ends up being a gateway to the campus. The campus itself is very nondescript. It's from the mid-50s. It has no real campus plan, no real identity. It has buildings that were built. They weren't really designed. And here was an opportunity for us to come in and design a building that would have some architectural credibility and be able to become a signature building for the campus. So we're located on a tough corner. It's opposite a gas station. And but we were able to create this building which really has some presence, not only on the corner and signifying a beacon, if you wish, for the university in terms of establishing an arts component within the campus, which is basically all agricultural, And so we came up with design which has two components to it, which I'll explain in a second. But the main thing is that this was a place where the James could exhibit their work. They had a home for their thousands of, well, it was 1,000, it became 2,000, for 1,000 quilts that they'd had, literally had underneath their bed in their apartment. So the Quilt Museum announces itself on the corner by this lantern, which at nighttime is a lantern. It glows from within. And here you can get a sense of how the brickwork relates to that quilted pattern that I showed you on the glazed facade. And so we had a very intricate pattern. And one of the things that was great about this is that we met with the mason on site, and they came up to us and they said, "Thank you." I said, "Why are you thanking us?" He said, "We only do stretcher bond in this state. This is a running bond." And he said, "This is the first time we've actually had to think before we do something." So they found it very challenging in a very positive way. So here you see the entrance to the Quilt Museum. On the left is the social spaces, and behind that big blank wall is all of the storage and for the quilts, and on the right is the educational spaces. Quilts are very sensitive. They cannot be hung out in exhibition space. The light levels have to be very low, and so they have to be literally in a big box without daylight. Here you see the back of the building with the smaller box at the back is the administration part of the building, and below that is the curatorial and conservational spaces. So the idea that we had, we looked at quilts. I mean, quilts are basically, as you can see the lady's hand like this, is that there are three pieces. One is the backing, the other is the applied front or applique, and in the middle is the batting. And we looked at that and said, well, you know, that's interesting. And how can we take that as a metaphor for our building? So we saw the backing as the back of house support. The conservation, storage, and exhibition is the bit, you know, the batting in the middle, and then the public access is the applique or the decorative part that you see, as you can see in this diagram. So this basically formed the diagram for our building. And of course, we embellished the diagram as we do. So here you see the plan, and it's a very complex sequence to bring people into the museum, because I mentioned before the issues of daylight. So we lead people in, and I don't know if this is, I don't think this really works. It doesn't, no, it doesn't. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you can see where there's 4 doors in a vestibule that leads to that horseshoe. That's the entrance area, and off to the side is the restrooms, of course. People travel from many, many miles to get to this museum. It's not easy to get to this place. The restrooms are very essential to be near the front door. So you're greeted, and then from there you go into that triangular space to the right, and then there is a ramp step which takes you up to the main receptions rooms above, but I'll come back to that. You can see there is a space that's the research area, which is in the middle of the circulation space. That's where people can get their first glimpse of the conservation of the quilts. Behind that, that big blue box is where all the quilts are stored. And for the quilts to come in, they come in through the service area, and then they're put through this fumigation process to make sure that everything's clean, and then they're brought in and stored and recorded and put into the big box in the middle. And then getting back to the public, they come up into the reception space up above, which has become one of the most popular places to have functions, weddings, everything. They make all their money off the functions. So, and this reception room has a great view back towards the long lawn which goes along Holdridge Street, which is the main street that runs the full length of the campus. And then behind that, there is the 3 ochre rooms, which is the actual exhibition spaces. But as one travels up the ramp along the edge of the space, there are a series of screens which tend to reduce the amount of daylight within each of these spaces so that you acclimate visually to lower light levels, so that when you actually get to the galleries themselves, the levels of light are quite low because it's very on a conservation principle, high lighting levels, whether it's incandescent, LEDs, or natural light, is very detrimental to the stability of the quilts. And then on the third floor, there is the library, which is the top right, and then a series of offices behind the library. So I'll just take you on a quick tour through the museum. The bricks pattern that you saw on the exterior extends into the interior, which you can see here. And from there, that pattern is then incorporated into a series of wood panels, which you can see to the right, which screen the main educational space behind that wall. And then you get a glimpse of the stepped ramp, which takes you along the perimeter of this space up towards the main reception room, which you can see here. And you can see the series of screens, metal screens, which help shade this space and shade the next space before you go into the exhibition spaces. I should mention that this, as I said before, this place is really very, very popular. I know it doesn't look like that in these images, but this was before the building was opened up. So, and I forgot to mention actually, on opening day, they had something like 1,000 people literally around the block waiting to get into the Quilt Museum. It's been such an incredible success over the years that we've now added on to, we doubled the amount of storage space, and for all of the quilts that have been donated by others over the years, it really has become a destination in Nebraska. There are not many other things in Nebraska as a destination, but if you ever do get to the Quilt Museum, nearby is the most beautiful state capitol by Bertram Goodhue, which in itself is worth seeing. So anyway, here you see the three galleries and how the quilts are exhibited. They'll be up for no more than 3 months at a time, and then they're taken down, folded very carefully, checked for any issues, and then put back down in storage. And then the next round of quilts are exhibited. As I said before, there was an addition, which you can see on the left-hand slide. It's the area just behind that red, sorry, I can't point, but on the right-hand side, that lower portion, that's the new addition, which doubles the amount of storage. And whenever bricks are used and you have an addition, you can never get the same brick. It's impossible, particularly after a 10-year break. But we went back to Sioux City, who was the company which we ordered the bricks from, but this is the best match that they could do. Behind the tree is the new brick. And here you see the Quilt Museum, and out front is a quite delightful sculpture by Linda Fleming, who also does some tapestry work as well. The next project is Immanuel Chapel. This is a totally different context. We're in Alexandria in Virginia. And this campus, first of all, I should tell you that the original chapel was built in 1881 and then was succumbed to a fire in 2010. And this fire came about, they put one of the candles back next to a window where the sun was coming in. They put a damp cloth on top of the candle. They didn't snuff out the candle properly. The heat from the sun dried out the wet cloth, and you can see what the end result was. The chapel burned to the ground. The campus was totally distraught. There was decisions or discussions about whether they rebuild the chapel or start anew. They realized that it would be best to start anew, primarily because that chapel just did not fulfill the needs of a teaching institution. So we came on the scene, we were interviewed, was selected, and we looked at the campus. It has a fine group of Virginian, very understated Virginian buildings, Virginia red brick buildings. And so they asked us to look at where to locate the new chapel. So here you can see the 1881 chapel. It's adjacent to what's called Aspinwall Hall, which is just above the chapel. And the 1881 chapel overlooked what's Andrew Jackson Downing designed grove. And so they asked us to where can we put the new chapel? Well, we thought that the best location would actually be adjacent to the existing chapel, the previous chapel. So there could be a physical connection between the two, if not spiritual, that it would be located so it would be very visible from Seminary Road, which is the longer arrow, and then, of course, to the grove, which is the peanut-shaped, of sort of like a footprint, green, which connects the old part of the campus to the mid-20th century portion, which is to the left of the screen. So we were having discussions with the dean, and one of the things that he and others requested we do was to create two buildings that would say welcome and worship. And so we have a new welcome center off the motor court, and we have the new chapel, which you can see there in that tan color. And you see the size of the new chapel compared to the previous chapel. It's 4 times, 5 times as big as the previous chapel. The reason they wanted to do that is that this is a learning, it's a seminary, so that they want to be able to teach prospective priests how to be able to do a small service as well as a large service. So first of all, about the welcome, you can see that the welcome center to the left, we put a new face onto that welcome center, so it faced out to the new motor court, where people from the local community or people from around the country would arrive, and they'd come to the new chapel, and that is the place of worship. And the place of worship is not only for the seminarians, which they arrive from the north, from the rest of the campus, and so we gave them a very open plaza to arrive, where they'd have a look back towards the 1881 chapel. The ruin was kept and was then made into a memorial garden, which I'll show you in a moment. And then the Alexandria community came from the Seminary Road and arrived at a portico rather than a plaza. So there's 2 different types of entrances for the two groups of people that use the new chapel. And I'll explain a little bit more about the layout in a moment. So one of the challenges for us was how to create a chapel that's intimate for collegiate seating for the morning prayer, which is usually around 50 people. And in the afternoon and weekend services, usually about 90 to 100 people. So we had arranged the plans so that it had intimate spaces as well as more generous spaces for a variety of seating groups. And one of the things that we did, we put the altar in the middle, but it was movable. So when they had an ordained seating event, they would be able to reconfigure the seating so that by moving the altar to one end, and then when they had a special event, a funeral or some other or concert and the like, then the altar could be moved to the east, and then that would provide 475 people to be able to sit at that service. So it goes from 50, 90 to 330 to 475. So it's quite a challenge architecturally to make a space that accommodates both a small group where it should feel intimate, and then also for a larger group where you really need to make sure everyone can see and hear, more importantly, what's going on. So here you see a view of the west elevation, which is the The community entrance, very low-key portico which runs basically, and a wing which runs the full length and beyond of the west facade. And then also you can see the Diocletian or thermal window, that's the arched window, beyond, or above I should say, which brings light into the main chapel. And then beyond that is a lantern which brings light from above. And I'll show you how that works internally in a moment. And it's important to see that we have a 100-foot high spire here that really gives the chapel identity, not only on the campus, but also beyond. And then on the extreme left is the Octagonal Room, which I'll show you what that's about in a moment. And you're probably asking, well, why is this building so traditional? And it had everything to do with place, everything. And they wanted something that brought the memory and the respect of the existing buildings on the site, and particularly the previous chapel. So we developed this design that has not only respect for the buildings that surround and make up the identity of the campus, but also there's a long tradition of beautiful brick churches throughout Virginia. So we still do hand drawings. So we're very proud of the fact that I have a whole series of hand drawings here. There were studies for how to incorporate different ways of detailing the brick in various locations on the building. And so these continue here. And so we really went to great lengths to understand how we could arrange the bricks through these pencil studies, understand how the human body relates to the proportions, not only of the bricks, but to the openings and the like. And of course, one of the most important aspects of the building was the spire, which really is what people see and remember. They see it from a distance, both on the campus, and they see it as they're driving along Seminary Road. So it's really a wayfinding thing. I mean, this actually does house real bells, and they're very noisy if you're inside, very. And so anyway, so this has become a landmark, if you will, wish on the campus. So more drawings, trying to understand how the brickwork will work on the building, and then of course those hand sketches then become real through the use of computers and Revit study, which 3D modeling and the like. And so this allowed us actually to lay out every brick on the building, which we could then give to the mason, and the contractor, who then gives it to the mason. And they were very appreciative of the fact that they didn't have to think too much because everything had been worked out for them. So we produced a series of mock-ups. The first mock-up was to look at the color blend and to see what was the appropriate mix. And you can see behind that is the Welcome Center. And most of the buildings on the campus, they had 3 to 4 bricks, a blend. We typically prefer 5 bricks in a blend, but you can see one on the right is a 3, and the other one is 4. And old Virginia brick was still in existence when we built the building, so they've now gone. But we used their bricks. It's quite a very beautiful brick, and so very pleased that we were able to incorporate their bricks in the building. And we had a mock-up made that showed all the different conditions in terms of the brick detailing. So that's very important to do a mock-up, as you know. And so we're very pleased with the outcome. We made a few corrections, but the mason, again, was very good at their work. And I'll just go through these images now that shows you how this all works. So here you see the chapel as a scene, as you see it as you approach the chapel. It's directly in front, and then the Welcome Center with its new face, which has gone from being on the left side to the right side of this image. So people who arrive, they can just go into the Welcome Center to ask questions about the Virginia Theological Seminary, which does attract a lot of tourists, believe it or not. It is the premier Anglican educational community in the US, and is respected around the world. And here you see the dean on his way towards the camera. So we have the entrance. It's a new gateway to the campus of Seminary Road, as you can see in the title. And then here we also had a welcoming entrance for the seminarians from the Grove. So very different entrances. One is a little bit more contracted, when we did that very much on purpose on the public side, so people coming through a small space, and then the big space becomes even bigger once you arrive inside. So here you can see the plaza. This is great for all the students and the faculty to meet together on a Sunday, on a beautiful day like this was, meet outside before they process it did the procession into the interior. And here you see the 1881 chapel ruin, which has been restored as much as possible. The fire marshal was very clear about what could and could not be kept. So this was the maximum amount of brick that was safe to keep on site. And you can see there's a beautiful memorial garden there now, which I assure you is very much used by both the seminarians as well as those who visit VTS. And it's a beautiful contemplation space. And you have a wonderful view back towards our new chapel. And that space also looks back to the contemplation room, which is this octagonal room, which is basically, it's like a hand reaching out from the building, reaching out to the old chapel, the burnt out chapel, the memorial garden, I should say. And you can see here the number of brickwork details and patterns and the like. These were all taken from the original chapel, so we incorporated that detailing, again, as a memory of place, back into the new chapel, so that people who remembered the old chapel could come back and they'd have anecdotes to say, well, I was here in 1963, and I remember these details. Well, that's what we think. So anyway, here's you can see again how the spire looms over in a very, I think, very good way over the chapel and the memorial garden. More of the details that you can see. So we really did work through these details throughout the new chapel. There's some very special details where we incorporate the cross, both in terms of just regular stretcher bricks and then also special bricks, as you can see in the corner of the brick surround to the door. And more of these details. We incorporated some of the metalwork that was found. There was a remnant of the original chapel that survived. We incorporated that into a garden wall. And again, you can see how we use crosses within the brickwork. It's something you don't notice when you first see the building, but as you come back and look at it a little bit more, you notice these little things the second time around. So here on the left is a close-up of the view I showed you before of the entrance portico, and on the right is the actual entrance portico looking back to the Welcome Center, and you start to get an idea of what's going to happen inside. Here you move into the chapel, and you see the grand chandelier. This chandelier actually, not only does it give light, it also has the sound system. It has a whole bunch of stuff up there too that's needed for present-day services. There's a lot of lights and the like, up lights, down lights, and the like. And you start to get a sense of the space. And we designed all the furniture. We partially designed the organ that you see in the background. And I should say that one unfortunate thing that happened, but we made it into something that was fortunate, is that there was a 200-year-old oak tree that was on the site, and everyone was lamenting the fact that it was going to be cut down for the new chapel. Well, fortunately, we were able to work with a local lumber place, and they were able to cut down the tree and then mill it so that the organ builder Taylor and Booty, who are one of the preeminent organ builders in the country, was able to incorporate it into the new organ. I mentioned John Soane before. John Soane certainly his work influenced the way we started to discover the appropriate shape for the chapel. And one of the important things about the chapel is not only the music, but the spoken word. And so one has to be able to talk without using one of these and be heard 60 feet away. So it's important that we were able to deal with the acoustics, and we were able to do so. And one of the fun things was when we're going through the design exercise, we built a model that was pretty much the size of where I'm standing here now. And the Dean Markham, is in the top left. He was overjoyed and overwhelmed when he was able to step into the model of the chapel space. And then also to the right is Barney Hawkins, very Reverend Barney Hawkins, who was the man who was able to secure the money. He was an amazing development person. He was able to, he's such a wonderful man. But he would say, I'm going out to meet with a prospective client, prospective donor. He'd wink at me and say, he said he's going to give, or she is going to give $10,000. Ha! I'm going to add an extra zero onto that. And he did. I mean, he did. It was astonishing. So you get, everyone was knocked out by being able to get into the model and see what the space is like. And you can see how the chandelier creates a halo for both the dean, the very reverend, and the reverend while they're in the model. So here you see that the chandelier again. You get a sense of the space here, and the oculi that you see, the round openings to either side, they are now filled, or a donation was given, Barney Hawkins again, a donation was given for 3 Brian Clark stained glass windows, which were installed after these photographs were taken. Beautiful pieces of work. Brian Clark is probably one of the preeminent stained glass people in the world. He's English and has a wonderful studio in England. And so here you get a sense of the space, and you can see some sense of the light coming over the walls to either side, and then also from above. And that chandelier that I just showed you, this is the chandelier outside. So total scale difference. It's the same piece, but you see it outside. We showed this image to the very reverend and the reverend, and they literally fell off their chairs. He said, "What? You're kidding? That's going to be way too big for the space. Are you crazy?" I said, "No, just hold on. Just trust us." So they did, and so that's actually the same chandelier. So it looks perfectly in scale with the space, but believe me, they were ready to fire us on the spot. And here you see the chandelier and how it relates to the architecture. It's really quite a beautiful piece of work. And it's a lot of engineering to hold that thing up in place. And here you see the chandelier looking diagonally, and this being an Episcopal church, go ye to the world and preach the gospel. And then you can see the organ to the right. It's really, and the design, but the sound is, Taylor and Booty are just unbelievably gifted when it comes to creating organs for a space such as this. And then you can see all the furniture that we designed. But the organ is actually quite beautiful. It's great scale for the space. And then beyond the chapel is the working rooms, and again, I really think that these are very exquisite spaces. Here you see the vesting room. In each of those drawers is a different vest. They have accumulated them over the years, and there's some really beautiful tapestries and beautiful fabrics and the like that are in those drawers. Here's the sacristy. Again, I think another beautiful space. These look empty on a Sunday or during one of the services. These rooms are very, very busy with people moving back and forward constantly. We were able to, I should say, the VTS was able to salvage a few of the LeConte stained glass windows, so we were able to incorporate them into the oratory. The pew below those three windows, that too was salvaged from the old chapel, and the pew became basically the paradigm for all of the furniture that we designed within the main chapel space. And from the oratory, you move through here into the octagonal contemplation room, which looks back and reaches out, if you wish, to the old chapel. So there's a visual connection between the two, which is very, actually is quite powerful. And so people come here after they've had a difficult day or a difficult moment in their life and can really contemplate what they need to contemplate at that particular time. But just having that connection back to the old chapel, we were very pleased with that opportunity. And so as the sun sets, you can see here the chapel in the evening, and we think it's quite welcoming to both those who frequent the chapel frequently and those who visit the chapel infrequently. So that basically is my talk, and you're lucky, it didn't take too long. So thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, the thing is, what's one last thing? You know, it's bricks. It's clay, water. You fire it with a bit of imagination, and you can end up with some beautiful architecture. And so, and you've got to have an architect who can do that, but with that imagination. But it is such an incredibly versatile material, and our firm aches at the opportunity to use brick whenever we can. It's so much better than all of that glass that you see everywhere around the city. So thank you, and I wanted to thank, actually, Ariana's here from our office. Ariana, Leo Velarde, and Shannon Holbein, and also Kristen Hwan, who helped put this together. So thank you for being here, all 13 of you. Thank you.